Hey Film Studies, you know why we're here. It is another digital day, and so I figured with today's time that I'm taking from you, I'll finish up these Blockbuster notes. So what we talked about last time after you took your first quiz was the movie Blockbuster, right? So not the Blockbuster rental store, but Blockbuster movies that make a lot of money. Okay, so these actually didn't really start happening until the 70s. While we did talk about the golden age of Hollywood and how those were event films that did make money, they found ways to make a substantial amount of money on films, and that's why they produced so many. We never really saw blockbuster movies until one big one came out in 1975, and that was Jaws. So we talked about Jaws and how their marketing and their very simplistic storyline, the easy to follow, cool sounding storyline, really drew people to the theater. So it was the highest grossing film until 1977 when Star Wars came out. And since then we see blockbuster movies all the time, okay? So we saw Spider-Man made $100 million, so it gets sequels. We saw The Avengers made $200 million, and that's got a whole universe, okay? And since then, we've seen a lot more superhero movies come out, these extended universes, because they make money, okay? And that's why the box office numbers matter. Companies like to look at how much money they're making, and that is what determines what gets made in the future then, okay? It also determines when movies get released. So we're talking about the summer blockbuster season, we're talking about the winter blockbuster season, and typically in the heart of winter, like we're at right now, we're not going to see a lot of big movies coming out because look at what we're doing today. We're snowed in. We can't go to the movie theater to watch a movie. We can't go anywhere, right? So they like to release movies when people have time off and when they have the ability to go to the theater, okay? And not just domestically. The overseas markets play a huge role in what movies get made in the future. Okay, for example, there's a reason that we have so many Transformers movies. Even though they stopped making as much money in America, people stopped going to every single one of them, they're very big in China. Same thing with Venom. The movie Venom came out this past year, and it wasn't a huge hit in America. It was an okay hit compared to the other superhero films that have come out in the last couple years, but it made a ton of money in China, and so now Sony is going to continue making more movies in that style, or in that universe. Even though studios think that they can predict what's going to be successful, they think that they can predict what's going to make them more money, they can't always predict the success of a film. For example, let's take a look at the movie Paranormal Activity. It came out in 2007 and it had a budget of only $15,000. That is nothing for movies nowadays. That's pennies, okay? And if you've seen that movie, you know that it makes sense that there wasn't much money put into this. They hired two relatively unknown actors to play our two main characters. The effects are all very simple, from a door creaking closed to loud footsteps being heard. And this movie then made $193.4 million at the box office. Think about how much money they made based on their initial budget. Now that budget is the sets, the crew, the actors, all got taken care of for $15,000. Okay, so both of the actors they basically volunteered to be in this movie because it was supposed to be this little small whatever horror film, okay? Neither of them had it written into their contract to make X amount of percentage of the total box office revenue. So even though the studio made so much money, the movie made so much money at the box office, those actors still only got paid the couple of $1,000s each of them signed up for. That's it. That's crazy. In any case, Paranormal Activity then, because it was so successful, what happened? The studio looked at it and said, we want more money, so we're going to make more movies like this. So it had 4 sequels and a spin-off movie because the first one made so much money. And each sequel and spin-off had a bigger budget, obviously, than the very first one. The first one was such a unique case. Okay, so this leads me to my point about what we're seeing in movies today, right? We see our blockbusters that are successful, and studios look at that success and say, I want more of that, okay? So typically, now in the last few years, in the last 10 years, according to this chart of movie remakes and movie sequels, they dominate because they make money. There's a reason that we have so many film universes. We have so many remakes, sequels, spin-offs. because they're making money. So until they stop making money or until something else makes money, they're going to keep doing this. One example of something defying that formula is the movie Crazy Rich Asians that came out this past year. It made a ton of money and it wasn't a remake or a sequel, and so potentially, what are they going to do to that? They're going to make more of those movies based on the other books that came out. But hopefully we'll get other unique movies that are not being just sequels of everything. Okay? So for this unit, we're going to focus on visual effects and sound. Okay, so what are we seeing that makes this movie epic and huge and over the top? And what are we hearing that really brings the movie to life? Okay, so when we get back to class, we're going to watch some examples of really awesome special effects. One being from Mad Max Fury Road, where most of the special effects were practical. What you see in that still shot here from the film with this guitar that's spitting out fire, they actually built that. There was actually a guitar that shot out fire that this guy had to play in the movie. So that movie is groundbreaking because it had so many practical effects. While I say that, there was also plenty of computer effects that were used. For example, like you see in this still shot here, Furiosa's arm was supposed to be entirely robotic. Obviously, the actress that played her had an arm yet, so they had to do a green screen sleeve on her arm to then adapt into what we see in the film. We'll watch this when we come back together as well. And then we're going to talk a little bit about aspect ratio. Okay, so what you see on the screen, how wide we see things. This is the difference between full screen and widescreen, and what difference does that make? As you can see in these images here, the top image is what we call full screen. This is what TVs used to look like. So even though you would see the full widescreen film in theaters, when you watched it on your square TV, your tube TVs back in the day, it would cut off the sides of the picture, which made for less full viewing experience. Okay, you missed out on parts of the movie. The second one was the next step up, where you would just get some cut off on the sides. This is when digital television became popular. And then the bottom one is what we see in the movie theater, and most TVs show this sort of picture nowadays. You see the full widescreen effects. Now this matters because that's the difference between what you see here on the left and on the right from Lord of the Rings movies. Okay, we see so much more of the universe, it's so much more immersive, so pay attention to that. We'll take a look at an example of the importance of this from the Hunger Games Catching Fire when we return to class. And then we'll also pay attention to sound. So I'll show you a couple examples of really awesome sound mixing from the movies Inception and Arrival when we get back to class. So we're paying attention to things that really immerse us in the story, that really bring something that is maybe unknown to us in the real world to life, and that really keep us on the edge of our seats. They maintain our attention and make us want to sit down in that theater to experience the full surround sound. Okay. The movie that we're going to be watching for this unit is Jurassic Park. It was released in 1993. It's one of my favorite films of all time. It's directed by Steven Spielberg, and at that time it set records. It was the highest grossing film of 1993, and at that time it was the highest grossing film of all time, until it got beat out, and these films just keep one-upping themselves, okay? So it features groundbreaking CGI. Now think of that, 1993 is the early days of computer technology, and a lot of the effects were done with CGI, and they still hold up to this day. So it was groundbreaking. People had never seen anything like it before. But it also features practical effects. Okay, so when they come up on a triceratops that is ill and laying down in the forest, it's an actual practically built animatronic triceratops. Okay, so they had a blend of these two different types of effect that really bring it together, and it features a beautiful score by John Williams and some really awesome sound effects that we hear growls and screeches and howls from these dinosaurs, and it really brings the world to life for us. Okay, so with that said, enjoy the rest of your day off, and I will see you next time. We'll watch those clips and we'll start Jurassic Park.